There's reportedly an object that is not in this country that is so large it cannot be moved.
Hello, how the devil are we? I'm Matt, and we're back with another reality check with Ross Coulthart. I wonder what revelations are in store this week. Are we moving the needle any closer to disclosure? It just feels like it's got a bit quiet recently. I'm sure people in the UFO sort of arena or the community will say, no, there's things happening in the background, but from someone who's very much interested in the topic, but doesn't live 24/7 in it, it just feels like it's gone really quiet. There's always these grumbles about, will Trump be the disclosure president? But then why is no other president or any other leader of any other foreign power disclosing? So maybe there's nothing to disclose. I believe there is, but let's see what Russ Coulthart's got to say this week.
G'day and welcome to the best time of the week, Reality Check Q&A, where you guys get to ask me the hard questions.
G'day, Ross.
Here to apply the blowtorch, my colleague in crime, Megan Medic. G'day, Megan. How are you?
Hey, Ross. How are you doing today?
G'day. Welcome.
Okay, let's get started. I'd love to start with a new sound
I love the small talk at the beginning of the segment.
from Rep Eric Burlison. He went on the podcast called ALN, and he made some comments about a possible UAP crash site.
There's reportedly an object that is not in this country that is so large it cannot be moved.
You know what? Ross was the first one I'm aware of that said it. I know Stephen Greer said it, but I'm not sure if that was after Ross Coulthart came out with there's a UFO so large that it's been buried. And I know people are saying you're pausing it already. But I'm just, before he says anything, it just seems like it's gaining more traction. South Korea apparently is very, very popular among people as the location for this.
That they've built an entire building around it. And I think either Greer or another individual has actually mentioned this site, but I'm not going to mention it because it is a classified location. But there is there's reported a really large object, and that's one of the locations that I'm requesting to get to. It's going to involve a lot to make that happen, but that may be the final destination.
So does that mean it's in the actual US? Because Ross alluded to the fact that it was outside of the US.
Yes. So this is a reference to, interestingly enough, by Representative Eric Burlison to the story I've been talking about for quite some time, probably 2 or 3 years. The allegations that there is a craft that is too big to move. So when the UFO, the craft, was discovered, it was non-human technology in a foreign country from the United States. And that when this craft was discovered, the decision was made to build a building over it. And it's interesting because I've copped the blowtorch from some people online for quite some time. Some are skeptical that such a thing exists.
Me too. I've mentioned it on a few occasions, as people might know. I've always been like, you're asking for disclosure. You're asking for people to come out and say, say what you know. Give us, release the details, disclose what you know, the information. But then you say, I've been told certain things and I'm not going to tell you.
As of course there always will be and should be. And then to hear Representative Eric Burlison say what he said today is quite extraordinary. The representative said there is reportedly an object that is not in this country that is so large that it cannot be moved, that they've built an entire building around it. Greer, that's I think a reference to Dr. Stephen Greer, or another individual, I think I plead guilty there, has actually mentioned this site, but I'm not going to mention it because it is a classified location. I'm requesting to get to it.
Is it classified? Because at the end of the day, the UFO map, the UFO might be classified, but the building itself surely can't be.
It's going to involve a lot to make that happen, but that may be the final destination. Now, what I can tell you is Representative Eric Burlison does know the location of the object I'm talking about, and for good reasons that people often get frustrated about. I have said many, many times here that we will not be revealing the location of the object, the country in which it is located, because it serves a very important national security purpose, and quite frankly, it might put the lives of very good men and women in danger, United States men and women in danger, if the location was to be revealed.
Pine Gap, Australia.
But
I can't imagine it's South Korea, because the location that I was aware of, that a lot of people are talking about, there was a location in South Korea where I think in the 70s they built like a ski resort, and it's at the side of a mountain, and it was built really quickly. But Pine Gap seems to be the obvious choice here.
it's good to hear from Eric Burlison that he is willing to investigate. Now, I don't take what he's saying as a complete endorsement of the idea that he's accepting that it's a real object. He's used the word reportedly there, but what I do note is he asserts that the location or the fact of the existence of the object is very highly classified and that he's seeking access to it. I take heart from that because it implies to me that he's working on other knowledge, and I've got a pretty good idea of where he would have got that knowledge from. There are people who have come forward independently to the Oversight Committee of the Congress and indeed to the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee with full details on this object. In variations from another clip, Representative Burlison also said, there is reportedly an object found in a country that is so large it cannot be moved. They've built around it. It's a location, but there is a reported really large object, and I'm requesting to get to those locations. I think he means location.
What gets me, right, if you find something of that nature, we found an NHI craft that is so large, and you'd have to assume that it was a craft, okay, rather than a non-human building or an ancient building, because you'd have to say it was a crashed craft, right? So large, and then you go, we've built a building around it, and this has been a few years. I can imagine that you'd want to research and exploit those technologies, so you build a building over it, but then you'd secretly be excavating underneath to be able to try to reverse engineer said technologies. If it's in a foreign country, but it serves a purpose for national insurance, national security, surely that points to Pine Gap, Australia.
He explicitly avoided naming the specific site. I know Dr. Stephen Greer has named a site in South Korea. I can't comment on that. I'm not playing a guessing game with anybody about the location because, I'll be honest, I think it's irresponsible to reveal the location. And as a journalist, I am legally, ethically obliged to ensure that I don't do anything to compromise the safety of our men and women who are serving their country, and neither would I want to. But
so he's saying there, if you refer, the men and women is serving our country, so this location is staffed by men and women of the armed services of the allied nations, be that Australia or the US, and I imagine US would also be there, or potentially Australia if it's Pine Gap and it's part of the Five Eyes. Don't know.
It's very, very interesting to hear Representative Burlison making a statement that he is investigating.
But it's another one of those, and apologies for keep pausing, but it's one of those where, is it going to be, oh, I can't get access to it, and it's like, I'm trying, and 3 years later, they're still talking about a giant UFO with a building on top of it.
And I sincerely hope he gets to go and have a look, because he's going to have a very interesting surprise. I just hope he doesn't just go to the facility that's sitting on top of the object and he asks to go below. That's the key issue.
Okay, we have another question also about Rep. Burlison. This is from Interstellar on X. Rep. Eric Burlison recently said in an interview, there will be a major new whistleblower coming forward with firsthand knowledge, possibly from the legacy program, and he could be the most credible to date. Does Ross know anything about this new whistleblower?
Look, I'm not sure specifically which whistleblower Eric Burlison is talking about because I'm actually aware of several. Yes, I know it's a frustrating time right now. I know there is not a lot happening publicly on the
Yeah, I said that. Does it feel like there's a lot happening publicly?
UAP issue, that it seems like Congress has rolled over and let the Pentagon tickle their tummy like supine little puppies. But the reality is, behind the scenes, there are good people in Congress who are asking hard questions, and there are whistleblowers coming forward. I've been responsible for referring a few of them on. So I'm not 100% sure which person Eric Burlison is talking about. But in a December 2025 interview with our friend and colleague Matt Laszlo, who runs the superb site Ask a Poll, where he doorstops politicians in and around the Congress, Burlison stated, quote, "There is one person who is a new whistleblower that they have a lead on," I think he's talking about the Oversight Committee there, "who might go public." And my understanding is he described this evidence as building, this whistleblower's evidence as building on evidence that had come from David Grush. And he emphasised that it was important to get witnesses comfortable for SCIF briefings, that's briefings inside a secure, closed facility, or potential hearings, maybe even potential public testimony. And
You know what I want? Before he finishes his point, I want somebody. I don't want like an aircraft veteran or somebody who's seen a video or a photograph of a UFO or somebody who's been told something by somebody. I want a scientist, an actual scientist, right, who's had hands-on experience with bodies, with craft, technology, whatever materials. A scientist going, I was asked to do this as part of this project, and I know categorically through my scientific experimentation and credentials, it's non-human intelligence. And you can vet my background. You can vet the fact that I've been paid by the Department of Defense or whatever it is. Actual scientists, we don't see any of those at all coming forward, especially not in public, maybe behind the scenes, but definitely not in public.
Don't know any more than that. The only other
But then as a scientist, would you want to give up the opportunity to, I don't know, work on exotic technologies from another world or another dimension? Would you?
person who's really talked publicly about a potential new whistleblower. My understanding is that Dr. Stephen Greer, the long-time disclosure advocate and a chap who's basically headed the disclosure project that goes back 20, 25, 30 years, he has talked about a lieutenant colonel, or a lieutenant colonel as we call it in the weird part of the world, from Edwards Air Force Base, who allegedly worked with ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles. Now, that person hasn't come forward yet. I sincerely hope this is true, and maybe that's the person that Eric Burlison is talking about. But
again, there's plausible deniability with that. If you came back and said, yeah, I work with ARVs, and you go, did you know for a fact that they were using advanced reverse engineer technology? You could go, well, it's like a scene out of X-Files where the colonel go, we get the ARV shipped down here. We don't build them, we just fly them. So is that still proof? I don't know. We'd have to see his testimony, but again, not a scientist.
Aside from that, I am aware that there are individuals coming forward. Frankly, I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the hell the Senate Armed Services Committee or the Senate Intelligence Committee are doing with the witness lists they've been given, but they don't seem to be doing a lot. Are they being paralysed by the committee chairperson leadership? I fear they are.
Here's a theory. A lot of people said Trump will come out and disclose NHI, proof of NHI, to sort of deflect and distract from the Epstein files. What if the Epstein files was to distract and basically halt disclosure? Just putting it out there.
Here's a hot topic right now. This is coming from Geo on X. There seems to be a connection between Epstein and the UAP topic.
You can't get anywhere without Epstein's name in there at the minute.
What has Ross heard, both past and present, about this?
I think the claims that there is a connection between Epstein and the UFO topic is frankly a very long bow. There is a document in the recently released 3 million plus pages of archives material, a document that is apparently from Dr. Jack Sarfatti, and it's a mailing list. I think even I'm on it because Jack Sarfatti is notorious in the community of UAP research for putting anybody and everybody onto a circulation list, and there's a frequency on this list of people like myself asking to be taken off it. Notwithstanding the fact that these requests are made, Jack keeps on putting us back on it. So yes, even my friend George Knapp actually recently observed that he was also on the list of people who were in receipt of the document that was referred to. What it showed was that Epstein and Sarfatti were clearly engaging. Sarfatti, by the way, is quite a prominent physicist. He tells a hilarious story about being a child and having a phone call from an alien spaceship AI, artificial intelligence, that told him he would be serving a very useful purpose on this issue of disclosure in the imminent future. And Jack has made this claim consistently throughout the rest of his life, and it hasn't yet, of course, been put to the test, but I sincerely hope it proves to be right. But the real point that...
It's a phone call. You got a phone call from a AI alien. A phone call.
Comes out of what Jack circulated to Epstein is that Epstein was clearly interested in alternative propulsion systems. Now, it may be because Epstein was spying for the Israelis. That seems pretty clear. Ghislaine Maxwell's father was, in fact, an operative of Mossad. And the reason I know this is because I spent a lot of time investigating the terribly sad story of Mordecai Vanunu, the guy who leaked the story of the Dimona nuclear facility where Israel built the bomb. Incredibly, this is actually a really good story, and it basically highlights the fact that there are people like Robert Maxwell, who was the editor of one of the major tabloid British newspapers. Actually, he was the owner. It turned out he was a stooge for Mossad. And so Mordecai Vanunu had tried to flog the photographs of the Dimona nuclear facility, which included evidence that they were creating weapons-grade uranium. And he tried to flog the story to the Sydney Morning Herald when I was working there. And I can remember one of my colleagues talking about this particular investigation and being very dismissive of this weird guy called Oscar Guerrero, who turned up with Mordecai Vanunu's pictures. And it's one of the reasons why, as a journalist, I've learned to always take sources that sound a bit wacky very seriously.
That's true. That's true, actually. You look at things like, I don't know how far down the rabbit hole you've gone with the whole Epstein files, but you look at things like Pizzagate, and you look at news. There's one particular, and I apologies here because I don't know the name, but there was a guy that was on, I think, a segment called Reality Check, funny enough, from 2017, and he was talking about Pizzagate, about how that was all, like powerful elite and paedophile ring, and it's linked to the pizza shop, and they were talking about pizza, but it was actually trafficking kids and stuff like that. And he lost his job for it. He came out and he was telling all this stuff, and then years later, it looks like it's all true. Alex Jones has said some really outlandish, weird things. You look at it now, some of it's probably true. So every time you think now that someone says, yeah, there's something weird and wacky, you give it enough time, you might look back and go, we're probably right. Cat Williams? Cat Williams, where he was talking about Diddy and like just don't go to a Diddy party years later. It doesn't look crazy now, does he? So give enough time and listen to enough crazy stories, but in the back of my mind go, is there an element of truth in this? Who knows?
Because what had happened was Mordecai Vanunu had literally been working inside the most sensitive nuclear facility in the world at the time, where Israel was building nuclear weapons, and he'd come to Sydney disillusioned about that job. And he had photographs that he'd covertly obtained showing proof that the Israelis were building centrifuges that could create nuclear weapons. And if the Sydney Morning Herald person responsible for seeing these photographs had just taken one bit of advice from an expert, he would have realised he was sitting on the biggest scoop of his life. Unfortunately, the guy that brought him the photographs was this Oscar Guerrero character. The person in the Sydney Morning Herald, who I will not name, basically laughed him out of the office. So Oscar gave the photographs back to Mordecai Vanunu. Vanunu went to London, flogged the stories to Maxwell's newspaper after initially approaching the London Sunday Times. The Times was investigating the story and eventually broke the story, which was a massive scoop. But in the interim, Mordecai Vanunu was kidnapped by Mossad because Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine's father, tipped off the Israelis. And it's been a tragedy ever since that Mordecai Vanunu has been under first prison arrest and then house arrest for the rest of his life. Now, why is that story relevant? Because it shows very, very clearly that the Israelis build relationships like they did with Epstein. Now, I'm not saying Epstein was necessarily an Israeli asset. I think it's a pretty good conclusion he was, and I have no doubt at all that the Israelis are interested in UAPs. They're already working with the Americans. Haim Eshed, the former head of the space program in Israel, has made no secret of the fact that the Israelis are aware of the American legacy retrieval and reverse engineering program, and I'm told the Israelis are probably more informed than most, particularly more well informed than my country, Australia, about.
Absolutely. They're in everything. I mean, it seems like everything ran through Epstein. So, at the minute, is Israel in control of the US politics? You know, is the release of the Epstein files a threat to Trump to basically attack Iran because he doesn't want to? These are theories I've seen, by the way. I'm not stating these as a fact or anything because I wouldn't know, but I have seen these theories and opinions on other channels. So, me personally, I do not know. But, yeah. Always take what everyone says with a pinch of salt, but keep an open mind.
What America is really up to with UAP high technology. That was a very long answer, but I've always wanted to tell that Oscar Guerrero Mordecai Vanunu story.
Here's a question from cigarette smoking Nico Wraith.
The cigarette smoking man. I mean, classic from X-Files. I've heard that they're going to reboot X-Files. If it's going to be a reboot, I just hope they really do it justice. If it's going to be I don't mind it being a reboot, because if it's shit and follows the 2020s, 2016 onwards of being like woke garbage and checking boxes, at least the reboot you could say, well, it's not part of the canon universe. But if it's going to be a sequel, I just hope they do it right. I just hope they do it justice, because X-Files for me, one of the most pinnacle classic TV series of all time.
UAP Gerb's latest video posted just a few days ago. The man is prolific. He names names. This is definitely his boldest, bravest naming of names thus far. Is Ross able to corroborate any of them? Given the risk involved, any strength in numbers would be heartwarming.
I'll have to watch UAP Gerb. I don't think I've seen it.
Now, I really strongly recommend UAP Gerb. The guy is a machine. He does the most methodical analyses of the legacy retrieval reverse engineering program I've seen to date anywhere. He did a great story with my friend Jesse Michaels on American Alchemy very recently, and on his own show, UAP Gerb on YouTube. And the guy is an acronym machine. I have trouble remembering ARROW, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. But I was looking, I actually did a printout of all of the acronyms, and you've got 1 page, 2 page, 3 page, 4 pages, 5 pages of acronyms that UAP Gerb, in the course of the analysis that he did, detailing all of the United States agencies that are secretly and covertly involved or linked in some way to the legacy retrieval reverse engineering program. But as this question asks, there are a number of people that he has named, and let's go through them. David Grush, of course, the former US intelligence officer, who was the NRO liaison, the National Reconnaissance Office liaison to the UAP task force in the Pentagon from 2019 to 2021.
of all the people in the UFO topic, I hold David Grush to that level, that standard. He came out, did his interview, no muss, no fuss, and then sort of retreated out of the shadow, out of the limelight. Didn't, start releasing a book. Didn't start going on the circuit. Didn't start going on like millions of different podcasts. And now I believe he works in there, working with Congress at the moment in terms of trying to declassify and work on getting disclosure, basically. Yeah, I think he's credible. I think he's really credible.
And he's the whistleblower, of course, who swore congressional testimony. Chris Mellon, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. Hal Puthoff, physicist, longtime UAP researcher. Eric Davis. I wouldn't say these people are part of the legacy program. So let's get to the people who are part of the legacy program. And the one I'm very happy to name, of course, is Terry Phillips, the former US Air Force officer and Air Force Office of Special Investigations Special Agent, who was the Executive Director of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations PJ and Air Force Space Force SAP Security Director. He became an SES in August 2020, served as a senior security executive at LEDOS and vice president for security at Northrop Grumman.
There you go.
Note that. Northrop Grumman. Very interesting.
What are you trying to say, Ross? What are you trying to say?
Northrop Grumman. Did I say Northrop Grumman? He is a key gatekeeper figure, and frankly, not a very nice person.
Ooh, does that mean he's been involved in disappearing people in the past, maybe?
Lee Russ, Air Force Office of Special Investigations Special Agent. Are you seeing a pattern here, a FOSI? You mean the people that go around intimidating and threatening and bullying people to shut up about the UAP program? Oh, those guys. He's served as a successor to Terry Phillips as the Executive Director of FOSI PJ and Air Force SAP Security Director. And I agree with UAP Gerb about those names. He names another guy, Russell Weiler, the Defence Intelligence SES. He's proposing him as an Air Force SES2 gatekeeper. I'm not so sure. I don't know about Russell Wheeler. William McClure, yes, I'm pretty sure he's involved. He's SES in the SAF AAZ Security Special Programs Oversight and Information Protection. Don't know about him. Randall Walden, yes, I have heard that name. He worked at Edwards Air Force Base, Nellis, and Pax River. I'm sure.
Right, here's what Congress needs to do then, right? Hold public hearings and get them to testify, right? And if they say I can't do that because it's classified, get them in a skiff. And then if they refuse to testify, basically just throw the book at them.
Sure, he knows about the legacy program. Donna Shipton, former US Air Force Lieutenant General, military deputy, US Air Force through and through, serving from department. I think she's been there for many years. Henry Wang, Air Force scientist and engineer, head of special studies at Wright.
Finally, an engineer, scientist.
Air Force Base. He's allegedly linked by witnesses, says UAP Gerb, to the Kingman 1953 UFO crash and the Aztec 1948 crash cases. He died in 1960. Arthur Stansel Jr., an engineer and witness in the Kingman case. I think there was a pseudonym they used for him, Fritz Werner, in the Kingman UFO case. Sean Kirkpatrick. Who could forget Sean Kirkpatrick?
Yes, who could forget him?
It was this show that brought you the story that after he had his shameful operation as the head of Arrow, Sean Kirkpatrick took a job that they tried to hide at the Oak Ridge National Laboratories. And I have no doubt at all Sean Kirkpatrick is up and over beyond his neck in the legacy program. It's absurd that he was going to the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, which is one of the key facilities for the operation of the legacy program. They tried to hide it, as we revealed here on Reality Check, that he was taking a job. The Pentagon denied that he was the Sean Kirkpatrick referred to in the staff lists. I was given a tip from inside Oak Ridge that that was the same Sean Kirkpatrick, and while he was still serving as the Arrow boss, he inadvertently got posted into the staff registry as a member of the Oak Ridge National Laboratories. That was because an overzealous HR person basically put his name on the list before it became official. They've tried to bury the fact of Sean Kirkpatrick's involvement, but the hilarious thing, this is how untrustworthy the Pentagon is on this whole issue. The very man who was responsible for supposedly investigating UAPs for the Pentagon is up to his neck inside the legacy program. That's how deceitful and lying and mendacious the Pentagon are becoming with this whole subject matter. They think they can bullshit us and it's not going to work.
Well, let's see. Who's the commander-in-chief of all this? Donald Trump. If he stays silent throughout his entire tenure, like he did for the previous time he was in office, then the buck stops there. He needs to get ahead of it. There's a guy, at the moment, he's not doing any favours for anybody.
The other one that is named, of course, is Ron Moultrie, the Undersecretary of Defence for Intelligence and Security from 2021 to 2023, who was involved in the establishment of Arrow. UAP Gerb suggests that he's probably a potential gatekeeper or somebody with knowledge of the legacy program, and I'm sure he's right. And the final one he named from memory is Don Dunlop, a US Air Force Major General, commander of the Edwards 412th Test Wing, and director of the Special Access Program Central Office. The only other names I would add to that, and we know this because of the leaked WikiLeaks documents, is General Neil McCasland and General Michael Carey, who are the two Air Force generals who were delegated to brief Tom DeLonge, believe it or not, the Blink-182 rock star, about the knowledge of UAPs by the US government. And it was clearly an attempt at some kind of controlled disclosure, using Tom as a safe person to get the story out through his audience. That all blew up in their face, of course, when Hillary Clinton didn't win the election as they expected, and when Donald Trump became president. And that's why for pretty much the last 12 years, the whole thing's been up in the air while we wait to see what Donald Trump will do. So that's my answer to UAP Gerb's list of acronyms. I cannot beat UAP Gerb on his astonishing capacity for acronyms, but I can confirm that a lot of the names that he identifies are indeed people who are directly associated and knowledgeable and heavily involved in the legacy UAP retrieval program. That's why it's getting utterly absurd, frankly, that we maintain the lie that the US government has no knowledge of extraterrestrial engagement with this planet.
You use the term extraterrestrial, NHI, Ross, NHI, because then they could turn around and go, well, we don't have any proof of that, the fact that they're extraterrestrial, but maybe interdimensional, interterrestrial. So, although maybe they are extraterrestrial. Who knows? Somebody just needs to come out somewhere and give us evidence. At the moment, it's all talking points, and even the whistleblowers coming out and saying, even though the incredible positions, don't really give us evidence. We need evidence.
Whether it be ET or NHI, I don't think the American public are going to buy the deceit, and they will feel egregiously misled if and when the president does eventually stand up at a podium and admit that they've been lying to the public all these years.
I think if you came out to the general public now and said, NHI exists, it's been here for a very, 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 very long time. They're interacting with us. We've got the evidence. We've got the craft. We've got the bodies. But we don't have any evidence of them actually being hostile. The technology is far beyond what we have, what we can replicate, which tells you everything you need to know, that they could have wiped us out anytime they wanted, but they've not, and they've been here for 1,000 years. The general public will probably go, oh, that's amazing, and then get on with their lives. People have got bills to pay. A lot of people always joke, if NHI got disclosed tomorrow, does that mean I still got to go to work? And the truth is, yes. The truth is yes, unfortunately. Now, I think it would be amazing. It might take us forward. There's talk about AI. The cost of AI in terms of compute power, energy, resources that's going to be needed for it far outstrips what we're capable of doing at the moment. So, experimental technologies, having the ability to generate energy on a mass scale that's clean and cheap. These technologies would probably take us out of the dark ages a little bit with that. We don't need to rely on oils and wars and natural resources. The way forward is through disclosure, I think. Maybe we're not ready for the technology. Maybe the technology will cause another arms race where we're using NHI technology against one another. But if that's the case, maybe we deserve it.
Clearly, one can only hope that the military and the intelligence community of the United States concern themselves with their reputations. What they can do to attempt to retrieve their tattered reputations is start telling the truth.
Okay, we'll move to our next question from Pete on X. Hi, Megan. Can you ask Ross why Bob Lazar hasn't testified at a UAP hearing? Rep Burlison keeps saying we need genuine firsthand witnesses now, not more claims. Peter.
Okay, well, part of the problem is that Bob Lazar's credibility is pretty shot. I'm not saying he's a liar, but there are aspects of his story that frankly don't make sense. He has claimed to have 2 master's degrees from recollection, and there is no evidence that he ever had those master's degrees. And of course, there's also the fact that he's easily discreditable because for a while he apparently ran a brothel. But
I didn't know that, to be honest. I always thought the school thing where he said I've got 2 master's degrees. The guy's intelligent. I don't think anyone's debating the guy's got intelligence. Above average intelligence, yeah, more than likely. Did he attend Harvard or MIT or wherever he said he went to? Potentially. It's easy to come out and say, okay, it's been covered up that I went to these places and I got a couple of degrees, but to discredit me, they've wiped all records. But then you must have got tutors, you must have had, lecturers, you must have had students, you must have had people there that could vouch for the fact that you were there. And it would have been easier. But he's always come out and gone, why would I drag anybody else into the conversation or the story? Which you turn around and go, well, that's easy. That's an easy cop-out. Because I don't know. I'm on the fence about that one. Because he's like, well, I'm telling you what I know, and it's up to you whether you believe me or not. I don't give a shit. And he comes out and says, I'm not trying to make money from these things, but then he was selling posters with his signature on. So, yeah.
Did he work at Area 51 S4? I think he did. And I say this in my book, In Plain Sight. I do think he worked at Area 51, and I actually spoke while he was alive to a guy called Dave Fruhoff, who worked at Area 51, not when Bob Lazar was there. Dave, sadly, has now passed away, but as I say in my book, Dave Fruhoff confirmed from people that he was speaking to that indeed, there was a Bob Lazar who worked at Area 51, and he also independently confirmed that there was an S4. I heard that from the horse's mouth, from Dave himself. But nobody is telling me that they have direct first-hand knowledge that Bob Lazar worked at S4. And of course, that would be very hard because anybody with direct first-hand knowledge of S4 would be under their security oaths, and it would be incredibly restraining on them to stop them from ever speaking about it. And this may be the reason, but there is another reason. Not only is there some question marks over Bob's credibility, although I suspect very strongly he did work at Area 51, the other issue is he's made it pretty clear he doesn't want to testify. In interviews, including a 2024 clip, he said, quote, "I've fought the fight for 30 years and I'm kind of happy the way it is now. The last thing I want to do is stir the pot again." He has affirmed that if he was put under oath, he would tell the truth and say that what he was saying was the truth. And he has repeatedly declined opportunities to testify publicly, viewing further involvement as unnecessary or risky after decades of scrutiny and threats and personal fallout. And who can blame him? Knowing, as I do, what happens to people inside the program, including allegedly, some people being murdered, and at the very least, certainly threatened and having their careers and lives destroyed, why would anybody put themselves up to that kind of scrutiny when Congress is wimping it on the whistleblower disclosure laws to protect people, particularly contractors?
Yeah, and I think there was a documentary about Bob Lazar, and does he run some sort of chemical company where he sells chemicals or something? And he was investigated by the FBI on about 2 or 3 occasions. And I think that's when he did the interview with, was it Corbell? Jeremy Corbell, where they turned the audio off and basically were talking about the Unum Pentium, Element 115, that apparently Bob Lazar allegedly smuggled out. And he said he was telling Jeremy Corbell what he did with it, so that if anything ever happened to him, at least there's a record of it, but he wouldn't want it on record. Again, it was sensationalism. Do you believe it? I don't know. But like Ross says, I actually believe that he did work at Area 51. The whole thing about him going to, these universities, it would have been just so easy to say, look, you speak to this person, and I went there. I don't know. I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence with it.
Yes, people who work in the...
But I do believe what he says about what he saw when he was there. I think it's 100%, because he could have sensationalized quite a lot of things. Like when he said he saw other craft, and he went, I can't give you a lot of details because I sort of saw them through like a door, and he said he saw some being, and he's like, he didn't go, yeah, I saw it and I talked to it and basically it did this, and I went in, I looked at this craft and it was like, it was levitating, it did like blah blah blah. There was some details that he went, I saw that, and he said, but I only saw it from afar, and it was like a second glance. So he did try sensationalizing a lot of it. But people who've watched his interviews over the years could tell me whether, his story's changed in that respect. I don't know.
Defence Department and the intelligence community are protected as government employees under the current whistleblower laws. But the reason why the new UAP Disclosure Act whistleblower laws were so important, and these were blocked by the chairpeople of certain committees in the Congress repeatedly throughout last year, the reason why these laws matter is that because they would have provided protection to people like Bob Lazar who were working as contractors. I think Bob was working for then EG and G. He wouldn't have the whistleblower protections that exist currently. And this is why it's a load of steaming bullshit that we are in fact providing protection for whistleblowers in the Congress at the moment. And it's why if I was a whistleblower, I would be extremely cautious if I was just a contractor. Pretty much most of my sources inside the legacy program are contractors. They think you have a right to know about the legacy UFO, UAP retrieval and reverse engineering program, and they think it's absolutely outrageous that this information is being withheld. But right now, the Pentagon holds the whip hand over any release of that information because contractors don't have protection. It's as simple as that.
Okay, thank you, Ross. Let's go to Proctor Hopkins on X. Do you think the upcoming moon mission could potentially be used as part of soft disclosure, a renewed focus on the cosmos?
It's funny how the moon's kind of, SpaceX now are focusing on the moon. They're not focusing on Mars. You've got NASA focusing on the moon. And I think there's probably a few reasons for that. One, it makes sense to have a staging base on the moon. So, like the amount of fuel that it takes to get payload into orbit is massive. So you basically try to get something that can go on the moon, and then you refuel from the moon, and it's easy to then launch to places like Mars if you were launching from the moon. And there's helium-3, which is a potential energy source on the moon as well. And strategically, it makes sense having a base there. So yeah, it seems like there's a renewed interest in the moon. Now, some of the theories in the past around, there was people who've seen photographs of antennae and bases on the moon and glass shard structures. I would have thought that any nation that would have put a satellite in orbit around the moon would have just had evidence of that, and we would have seen it by now. Who knows?
Well, you can watch the latest reality check episodes on so-called lunar anomalies presented by Dr. Maneli Direkshani, and we've presented already the first of those, and hopefully by the time this Q&A is out, we might present the second. And I think Maneli Direkshani, who is a very well-respected physicist and has worked with organisations like SETI and the Scientific Coalition for the Study of UAPs, I think he has presented a very cogent case to at least suspect that NASA is deliberately redacting, blurring, hiding images on the moon to try and reduce their resolution so we can't see what's there. He believes that there is evidence of potential artificial structures on the moon. And I don't think that America's premier space organisation, NASA, is being open and discerningly transparent in what it's providing the public. I do think that what Maneli reveals in his most recent episode, the second of our lunar anomalies, it raises very serious questions about claims made to my friend, who's pseudonymously called the Spaceman, who was a close personal friend of Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Mitchell told my friend, and I relate the story in my book, that all Apollo missions to and from the moon were followed by craft, and that he actually photographed blue lights. And indeed, these blue lights are visible in photographs, official NASA photographs. And Maneli Direkshani takes us through some of those images in the report that he does. But do I think that these moon missions will be a recipe for soft disclosure? No, I don't. I think at the moment there is no intention by anyone. I think contrary to the assertions being made by a British filmmaker, I don't think that there is any move at the moment. I am getting assurances from inside somebody at National Security Council level that they're not aware of any movement at all. So if there is a decision being made by President Trump, as is being asserted by Mark Christopher Lee, that there's going to be some kind of a disclosure in July around the time of Roswell, my sources don't know about it in the National Security Council, and they should. Because if there was a strategy document being proposed for some kind of controlled disclosure, you'd think that the president's premier national security advisory group, the NSC, would know about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to say that something wouldn't happen, though. Like, you know, whilst they're on the moon or orbiting the moon, then they get visibility, and then they say, "Oh no, look at that! We've spotted a UFO." They film it with high resolution cameras, and then that's just one step closer to disclosure, possibly.
I do think people should be aggressively asking both the president and Marco Rubio, acting National Security Advisor and Secretary of State, whether there's any truth to these claims, because we are going to start seeing things on lunar missions. If, for example, Elon Musk does do a manned voyage, at least in orbit around the moon, it's inevitable that high-resolution sensors are going to see the far side of the moon and hopefully be able to obtain high-resolution imagery of some of these things that people like Dr. Maneli Direkshani have shown us in recent reality checks.
I don't know about that. How many nations have been on the dark side of the moon and not one of them has disclosed anything? It would have to be a global conspiracy that nobody is disclosing anything related to bases or artifacts on the moon. I couldn't believe that that's the case.
I think the public's got a right to know. I think there should be some kind of controlled disclosure, and I think it's completely untenable for this continued cover-up to continue.
Say goodbye. Okay, Ross, that was the last one for today. Thank you for your time.
All the best. Thank you so much for joining me. If you do want to send questions to Reality Check, you can email me at realitycheck@newsnationnow.com. And please don't forget, you can listen to Reality Checks on all good podcast audio sites, including Audible and Spotify.
Here's Ross. I don't think moon missions are potentially going to be anything to do with disclosure. Whistleblowers, more whistleblowers coming forward. Fantastic, but it's just more people talking. Give us the evidence. I want to see bodies. I want to see craft. I want to see NHI. I want to see engineers. I want to see biology scientists, experts. I need the nuts and bolts. Don't want anything to woo. What's happened with Skywatcher? Like, what are they doing? That's all gone quiet. They said, give us a year and we'll have something to show for it. The needle's moved there again. Is it a grift? Who knows? Yeah, it feels like it's just always, there's something coming this year, there's something coming next year. Oh, it's the needle's moved, the dates have moved. You just get a little bit tired after a bit of just constantly waiting for the next date, the next thing that's going to happen. Let me know what you think. Anyway, I hope something's coming this year, but the only thing I know for certain is we've got Disclosure Day by Steven Spielberg, and again, I'm not expecting that to be any revelations, so we shall see. You take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.